I've always been fascinated by the last videos of YouTubers who are long gone, because 90% of the time, there's almost always a story behind why someone stopped making content. So, their final video, whether they know it's their last work or not, can often come off as incredibly profound just from that context alone. The reasons for why a channel would stop uploading vary greatly in scope and size. Sometimes there seemingly is no apparent cause for the end of a channel. And in other cases, the stories behind those can be legitimately sinister. But regardless of what caused them to stop, the ghosts of these YouTube channels leave behind, among other things, their last video. That, depending on the situation, can be seen as a great sorrow, a new beginning, a confusing mystery, or simply put, the end of an era. This is what this video is going to talk about. All channels of any size and prestige eventually come to an end. But depending on what was exactly the cause, an account's last words could either have been made intentionally or by complete accident. Firstly, there's the accounts that, for better or for worse, get wiped from the face of YouTube via getting banned. So in these instances, the last videos of these channels are typically the least deliberate, as since terminations are often so sudden, their final videos would have usually been like no other. This is what happened to the infamous Leafy's Here, who at one point was the largest channel to have ever been terminated. This was his last upload. If he had known that this was the video that would get him banned hours after uploading this, he probably would have done things differently. Besides being an animation instead of, CSGO surfing, his last video was otherwise just as unhinged as his other content. Knowing this was his last video, in an eerie way, the very thing that gave him great success was also what caused his downfall. Of course, certain channels get terminated because, in classic YouTuber fashion, they do something that makes the public turn against them. So, while they wouldn't exactly know if their accounts would get wiped at the time, these said YouTubers would still try and hastily attempt to fix what they broke. Some YouTubers pull through, but many others do not. Some channels even survive termination, but unredeemed in the public eye, still pack up and never return again. As for those cases, terminated or not, these last videos are just depressing, like a last cry before being banished for all eternity. All those years spent building up their careers, gaining worldwide fame from their videos, and to see this as their last work is incredibly sad. However, what happens when a YouTuber knows, even ahead of time, that they're going to be banned? This makes the story of Mumkey Jones the most chilling tale in this category. The rabbit hole about this guy is quite deep, but in short, the channel was a stronghold for edgy content in the late 2010s, but just before 2019, he would watch on standby as both his main and second channel were, under shady circumstances, systematically struck down in a single day.
So it seems clear to me that this is like a hit job, specifically by YouTube against me.
This one took some time to find, but technically his last video was, in his own words, an emergency broadcast. I say technically because, as it turns out, this video was pre-recorded a year in advance in the event of a future crisis.
Well, that's why I am recording this on July 5th, 2017. I'm uploading it on private, and when the time eventually comes, if it ever comes, I can just set this to public.
His final video pretty much shows us that he knew something like this was going to happen. He knew he was on thin ice from the very start, but unfortunately, he wouldn't be able to survive this time around. That facecam video, by the way, was uploaded on a fresh third channel, which also got terminated shortly after. And just like that, his entire catalog vanished at the snap of a finger, leaving behind as his last video an old pre-recorded message about his impending doom.
But the truth is, I've been thinking about retiring for quite some time now.
So as you've seen, some channels have to stop uploading by force, via either public perception or outright banning.
Follow these basics at 3 a.m.
Like National Geographic.
But the truth is, these are the minority of cases in causing a channel's death. In reality, a more common reason for why a YouTuber would cease to create is burnout. There's no need to explain this really. Most creators go into YouTube firsthand with fun in mind. They start making videos for fun. So once the conditions legitimately become a job, as if making videos feels like a 9 to 5, that's when the switches tend to go off. Indeed, content fatigue has claimed the careers of hundreds of YouTubers. Not only is it a major role to the end of channels, but it tends to be the one that people can see coming. Sometimes you can see a channel's deterioration from burnout a mile away. This basically creates for the viewers a visual layout of a channel's mental state. You can watch as, slowly but surely, certain YouTubers lose their groove for content creation and eventually just flat out stop. But in my opinion, the biggest reason as to why a YouTuber would stop making content is simply because they moved on with life. Not all people that make YouTube videos are YouTubers. They might produce quality videos with millions of views, and even have channels with millions of subscribers, but regardless, still decide that they don't want to do this permanently. For the most part, it usually just comes down to the passage of time. Time in the sense of their lives getting busier. Super Genius, after years of doing gaming content, is now married and living in Japan. Or time in the sense of having new careers. Psychic Pebbles and Red Pilot Sun both dabbled in Adult Swim after their last videos. Unlike those two who left on a whim, SMG4 let everyone know on his last video that he was now a full-time member for Glitch Productions. And Gliche says he's studying for game design. This can make some of these last videos really bittersweet when given that context. It's not only a way of looking at a person's past, but also into a long-gone world of a previous era. Chances are, the entire landscape of YouTube changed since they last uploaded. And depending on how much time had passed,
Do you like my sword, man?
they would have not only become completely different people since their final creation, but also the very viewers that used to watch them. Now, this might not be his last work, but let me tell you, I remember the day ZeoWorks made this. For anyone out of the loop, he's a game dev who created the cult classic Slendytubbies, and it's sort of a semi-staple on this channel. When he made this video in 2023, I may as well have been a different person. YouTube may as well have been a different person. Same goes with Yahia Mice. I watched How to Steve the day it came out, and oh my god, I would have been in middle school. I'm on a roll now. When this video was made, I was making this kind of content. Just unrecognizable. And the last time Filthy Frank uploaded, I hadn't even created this channel. Okay, back on track. Looking at the first videos of these said creators, one thing seems for sure, and that is that perhaps when they were starting out, they had a lot more free time, and could make all the content they desired. But once life hit and hobbies and routines had to go, they would open the door to the next chapter, with some either leaving with a goodbye or already having their bags packed. There is, though, a more depressing reason as to why someone may stop uploading. We've seen the last videos of channels that got burnt out or simply moved on with life, but what does a last video say about a channel whose owner is no longer with us? YouTube has been around for 2 decades after all. Within that span of time, some YouTubers are now resting in peace. This would make their final videos all the more eerie, especially if they knew beforehand that they did not have much time left. The one case I want to look at in detail is that of Kitty0706. You know, the guy that made this video. His final video at first glance doesn't seem particularly out of the ordinary, but you must understand the background context. Starting in 2012, Colin began a long battle with leukemia. At one point, it even looked like it was disappearing, but alas, it came back once more. Despite knowing this though, he still decided to make normal videos. In Kitty's own words, "I strive to continue to create content. Why? Because I love doing it, and loving what you do makes you happy." In this view, he at least passed away doing what he loved. I am especially fascinated by Kitty due to how long ago this all was. This channel is effectively a time capsule of what 2014 and before was like. Him mentioning Google++, random Let's Plays, and just in general, videos that weren't really made for monetization in mind, because back then, that was not really most people's priority. Because Colin is no longer with us, this channel will not be touched again. As such, it's frozen in time, and is practically now a sacred place to pay tribute to. It's a bittersweet pilgrimage coming back here every now and then, and this applies to the other YouTubers resting in peace. What was once a place to laugh and have fun is now a place to give respect and to think back on. And then of course, there's the ones that never even said goodbye. Channels that left no posts, no comments, no explanations. Throughout this video, I've talked about all the different kinds of stories behind a YouTuber's end. But sometimes there is no story, not one that the public knows at least. Some channels we can put the pieces together. For example, Sunny V2's last video makes it seem like he abruptly stopped for no reason. But once you add in the context that around the same time his channel stopped being monetized, this makes a lot more sense. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the channels that, honest to God, we have no idea what happened to them after their last project. I suppose we can assume that they got employed or something, but without confirmation from the account's end, we can only be left to speculate. I am especially in love with dead small channels. Not only did these guys leave without a trace, they also left without hardly anyone noticing. But I did, and I'm left curious as to what might have happened.
What the hell is this?
当然，一共还有486个我。
Okay, so to prove my point of like the greatness of small YouTube channels, there's this channel right here called Big Daddy Butch. He created this channel on December 17th, 2009, and what's interesting is that the very same day he made all these 6 videos right here in a single sitting and then vanished. We do not know where this guy is. He is gone. He just left behind these 6 great videos, and let's see, which one shall we watch first? Let's see. How about Kids on Xbox Live? That's a pretty good one. Let's see what he has to say for here.
Now, there are 2 things that Big Daddy Butch likes.
Okay.
He likes getting pussy, and he likes Xbox Live. And the other day, I was on Xbox Live.
Wait, let's see the description.
You get my point though. Whatever the case was that made them drop their work, hopefully they are doing just fine. And again, since there's nothing to go off of as to why they stopped making content, there's simply nothing more I can say or add. So it's time to move on. The state of a YouTube channel can be seen as an empire with a pulse. That's why when channels stop uploading, people refer to it as dead, and channels that are dropping off in views as dying. In this context, many empires of YouTube, big and small, have been abandoned and become run down throughout the years. Whatever it was that ended the said channel though, the work that they left behind will be discovered by future generations, who will explore this chapter of YouTube that may no longer exist in the present. It's up to us now to write the history of these long gone eras. This video was very interesting to make, and I hope you found it interesting too. I don't really have much else to say now, so I suppose I'll be ending it here. Thank you to everyone who watched until the end, I hope you've learned something today. And yeah, take care, man.